Okay, we're recording.
Okay.
And your name is?
Dr. Leon Kelly. I'm the Chief Medical Examiner and Coroner for El Paso County.
For El Paso County. Okay, and we were talking about the uptick of suicides here in your county and the full state of Colorado.
Yes, nationally, really.
And I had asked you, I have parents that are trying to get a hold of the toxicology reports for their children that have died by suicide.
Yes.
And you were telling me, and they're not able to get that, and you were telling me that is because of...
So in Colorado, autopsy reports are public record unless those autopsy reports are sealed by a judge. And in this case, during our period of the suicide epidemic that we had that lasted about 2.5 years, there was a good number of those cases that were actually sealed by a judge because of the ongoing concerns about media contagion. The fact that all of this, everyone was talking about the suicide. It was in the media daily. That there were concerns by some family members of young people that died, but they didn't want those reports out in the public. So it was decided to seal all of those at that particular time. The problem is once they're sealed for everybody. So even families, media, neighbors, even researchers in those cases. The specific autopsy reports aren't available.
What is a way for us to get them unsealed, or is that impossible because some of the families have requested them to be sealed?
So that's probably not a question for me. That's a question for a lawyer. I don't know how that part works.
Okay.
Yeah.
We know that the number one cause of death for ages 10 to 24 in the state of Colorado is suicide.
That's correct.
And we know, this is public knowledge, that the number one substance they're testing positive for ages 10 to 19 is marijuana.
Yeah. In El Paso County, actually, we had a period where nicotine was actually the most common drug that was found. But marijuana is usually the most common drug of abuse that we see in suicides.
And it used to be alcohol, is that correct? Would you say?
Historically.
Do the suicides consist of hangings, gunshot wounds, or a variety of things? Or is there
usually a combination, usually equal combination of firearms injuries and often asphyxias.
Okay. And then what is your advice to the parents out there that are dealing with marijuana abuse, the uptick of suicide behaviors, and what can we do as a state, as an advocacy to come together and try to educate our children that marijuana is not helping them, it's hurting them?
I think when it comes to mental illness and suicide prevention, there's no silver bullet, there's no magic thing. There's not one factor here, there's a lot of different factors. Substance abuse is certainly one of them. And so we know that substance abuse, particularly changes in behavior, all of those in youth are concerning issues. So be involved in your kids' lives, know what's going on with them, and know when they've got some of these other red flags, and that may be marijuana use in some cases. Those are kids that are needing help, that don't wait for them to come to you and ask for help. You need to be a parent, you need to go to them. And do whatever it is that you think you need to do to get them the help that they need, whether they want it honestly or not.
Well, they say that parents are a driving factor for their children's health and well-being, and that is so true. But now we're living in this culture that has embraced marijuana and the advertisements all around, and unfortunately some of their advertisements are not true about it treating mental illness and depression. I know that's what my son argued with me, that it would help his anxiety and depression, and in the reality it's making it worse and then increasing their risk for suicide, homicide too. So were you a coroner prior to the legalization of marijuana here?
I was. Well, I've been the deputy chief since 2008. So I've been in this community now at the coroner's office for more than a decade.
Okay.
And so I've been here throughout the entire transition to legalization. What I would say is, everyone should understand that marijuana is not a mental health medication. It's not. The best thing parents can do is get informed and know the facts about it, and be able to have very, very difficult but brutally honest conversations with your kids. Because your kids are going to come to you with information that they've gotten that they think is true. Every parent, or even every one of us who was a teenagers, remember that state where we thought we knew everything.
Yeah.
And the reality is that we don't. The more armed a parent is with good information, true scientific science-backed information, not propaganda, but scientific facts, to have that honest conversation, the better off they'll be to help guide their child. That's what our responsibility is.
Yeah, that's all we can do.
That's all we can do. They're going to live their life ultimately, but your responsibility is to be the best guide, mentor that you can be, to provide them the information they can to make good decisions, because that's all we can ask of them.
Yeah, it's really hard to do that in this, what my
world.
friend Karen calls the marijuana minefield.
Yeah.
And she's a mother that lost both her children. And so did you see a difference? Do you see the impacts marijuana is making on the community in your practice?
Certainly. I mean, this is the percentage of people that end up at our office who have marijuana on board. Obviously, we're still in the infancy of understanding the ramifications and the consequences and the fallout from this, and so our office will be a part of that moving forward, is being able to provide public health officials and law enforcement good, sound, science-based evidence for what we need to do moving forward.
So you've definitely seen an increase of harms.
No, absolutely, yes.
And when people say marijuana doesn't kill, do you agree with that statement?
Marijuana is not a drug that you're going to get what we traditionally think of as drug overdose intoxications. Heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, even alcohol. If you use above a certain level, those drugs are immediately lethal to you. Marijuana doesn't affect us that way. It doesn't mean it's not dangerous, though, because it affects us in other ways, right? No one's also going to die of tobacco use in an acute setting. But look at the ramifications of tobacco use in our society. The cost to all of us, the senseless lives that are lost at a young age, and all the other health consequences and monetary costs to society. And those there are ramifications and negative things that go beyond just the number of people that die from something.
When we talk about like a marijuana overdose, we don't necessarily talk of respiration stopping. It might be affected. And some of the doctors I talk to in Pueblo tell me some of those people end up on a ventilator for a day or two, but in time they get better. And they explain to me that the receptor sites in the brains for the marijuana or the cannabis are fewer than like opioids or the other receptor sites, and they're not necessarily located in the part of the brain that controls breathing. So us moms, when we talk out, we're like, yes, you can overdose on marijuana. You're not necessarily going to stop breathing from it, but you might have a psychotic episode, or something like that. So would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, it's a psychedelic medication. It's not going to affect you the same way that opioids or even an overingestion of alcohol. But the overuse of the drug, particularly in the types of marijuana we see today, can have profound, very dramatic and life-threatening effects, particularly in the area of psychosis and behavior. Drugs like that don't necessarily kill you because of direct intoxication, but they still can create. They make you do things, and they inhibit your judgment, and put you in bad situations that can also encourage you to either harm yourself or harm others, or just make bad decisions that ultimately result in serious accidents or injuries and death.
That's a good way to explain it. One last question. Do you feel the legalization of marijuana, do you feel marijuana has contributed to deaths here in Colorado?
There's no doubt. The more marijuana, the more intoxication you see, the more likely you are going to have situations where, whether they're motor vehicle, whether they're bad choices, whether they're, the drug trade in and of itself. The legalization of marijuana hasn't eliminated the illegal selling, producing, and all the other crimes that go along with it. And so many of the homicides that we see aren't necessarily someone high killing another person, but the circumstances that led to that are essentially the marijuana drug trade.
The drug trade.
And so there's no doubt that that has played a role in the violence and deaths in the city.
I know I said I'd only ask you one more question. I don't want to keep you long. The murder rate is increasing in Paso County, and marijuana is a contributing factor to that.
Certainly some of the homicides that we see are at least tangentially, if not directly, related to the marijuana drug trade. It's not uncommon for me to have homicides where that's what was supposed to happen. They're trading weapons for drugs, they're trading drugs for money, and things go south very quickly, ultimately resulting in people's death.
Yes, and of all ages too. Young.
Of all ages, yes.
I really appreciate your
welcome.
time. Thank you so much.
All right.
That was awesome.